1, 2, is this on?
Wrestlers have limited control over match outcomes and the way storylines unfold. As such, they're sometimes asked to take part in matches, moments, or angles they want no part of.
I don't want to lose my mask. It's part of my whole deal, you know, this is me. And I had a little dispute with Eric, and I said, damn, I'm not going to go. I'm going to say I got hurt or something. And Eric called me up and he goes, you better show up. If not, you're going to be in breach of contract.
Any objections and apprehensions often fall on deaf ears.
To me, the Boy George thing and coming out of the closet on national TV, that was a message, I thought. And I was like, if you come out of the closet, we're going to beat the shit out of you.
Somebody found something out or heard something or said, let's put this guy to task. And it's a bullying WWE trick. Why else would you do that?
But this video will be highlighting those occasions where talent had to bite the bullet and perform against their will.
But I was ready to quit. The day that they put me in the RTC, I was like, I'm out of here, Vince.
Today, we list 10 wrestlers who were forced to do things they refused.
But I had someone higher up tell me, you need to wear a low-cut top so your breasts are out, and you need to put oil on your chest. You need to knock on his door and lean over his desk and say, Vince, what can I do for you? And I said, I don't do that.
It's no secret how much of a hothead Goldberg was during his first run in wrestling. His meteoric rise sparked lots of jealousy and saw plenty of people giving Bill bad advice. This clouded his view of the business, which is especially true when it came to losing matches. Goldberg only lost a few times in WCW and once fired back at the prospect of laying down for Scott Steiner at 4 Brawl 2000. In weeks leading up to the event, head writer Vince Russo couldn't convince Bill to do the job. Therefore, Russo had to go to the president of WCW's parent company, Turner Entertainment. Vince explained the situation in an interview with John Poz.
And he basically said to me, if this were real, Scott would never beat me. And I said, well, Scott's right over there. You go tell Scott that and see what Scott says. I swear to God, that's what I said. Brad Siegel had to fly Goldberg and his agent to Atlanta to tell Bill, you're doing the job. Brad Siegel, that's the level it got to, where the head of the network said, you're losing this match.
Even though the issue had seemingly been resolved following intervention from the higher-ups when it came time for the show, Goldberg was still fuming at having to lose. So much so that he got in Russo's face ready to explode. Vince described what happened while talking to Maven Huffman.
He's this close to my face. He's doing this. I said, Bill, if you're going to hit me, because you're not going to intimidate me. Right. So if you're going to hit me, get it over with and hit me. When I said that, it was like I let the air out of the balloon. He's like, I'm not going to hit you.
Bill unwillingly did the honors for Steiner at the pay-per-view.
He's out. Get him out of there. Scott Steiner wins.
But to this day, Russo laments his time working with Goldberg.
The most difficult personality that I ever had to work with.
Really? In what way?
He just bought his own hype.
Previously, Bill wanted no part of a feud with Chris Jericho in '98. He didn't even want to appear on screen with Jericho. Chris continued chewing his own angle on the show until Goldberg finally got his hands on him. But because of real-life heat and backstage politics, they never had an actual match in WCW.
I don't think Goldberg was too pleased about it. He didn't want nothing to do. He felt like that was going to bring his status down.
He hated it. He hated every bit of it. Everyone did. Hogan did. Bischoff did. It was just something that I made good underneath the radar. And then once it got over, they tried to squash it, but I wouldn't let them get a legitimate money-making angle. At least I thought. At least enough to do a pay-per-view with it. And they would never do it. They kept fighting it and fighting it and fighting it and fighting it. And then it just ended up petering out with no payoff.
World Championship Wrestling struck gold with Bill, but failed to capitalize on Rey Mysterio's stardom. Case in point when they forced him to remove the mask. WCW's president Eric Bischoff felt that to truly connect with the audience, Rey needed to show his face.
And the American audience didn't have the fascination with the mask and the relationship with the cultural aspect of that the Mexican audience did. They just don't. Is when you've got a wrestler and you can't see their face, you can't see their emotion. And if you can't see their emotion, you can't get sympathy for them. His character had been around long enough where I thought, okay, if we wanted to go to the next level, let's see him feel what he's feeling when somebody's getting heat on him.
Rey had gotten away with losing the mask at Halloween Havoc 97 against Eddie Guerrero. Bischoff was persistent at first, but Mysterio pushed back.
And I had a little dispute with Eric, and I said, damn, I'm not going to go. I'm going to say I got hurt or something. And Eric called me up and he goes, you better show up. If not, you're going to be in breach of contract. I said, well, Eric, I mean, is there any way we can work this out? I don't want to lose my mask. It's part of my whole deal, you know, this is me. He's like, you're going to do what you're told, da-da-da-da. I said, all right, cool.
Eric warned that Rey would be in breach of contract if he refused. This meant there would be fair grounds for termination. Then at the 11th hour, plans changed.
Ultimately, when it became obvious to me what an issue it was for Rey, we had to relent and revisit the topic at a later date.
Rey had gotten away with losing the mask at Halloween Havoc 97 against Eddie Guerrero. The next time, Rey wasn't so lucky.
And I really believe that Rey could be a bigger star to us Without the mask, we need to see Rey's face.
Mysterio reluctantly agreed to lose the mask at Super Bowl IX. He and Konnan were defeated by the Outsiders, meaning Rey had to show his face to the world.
I felt like I was naked.
Let's leave it to Beaver.
In Mexico, the mask symbolizes their identity. And to lose a mask is losing your identity.
I truly felt like I had let my fans down, my family down, my heritage down.
The unmasking was a huge miss for WCW. They had failed to market the mask, despite Mysterio's popularity.
Would have made a lot of money. And
you talk about like the merch?
Merch, yeah, they never sold masks in WCW. Oh, wow. You know, which is crazy.
He continued to do good work until the company closed, but there was so much untapped potential there with Rey in the mask.
I think at that time, because money and merchandising for masks, for WCW at least, was not anything anybody was excited about.
Hardcore Holly was someone who made wrestlers earn his respect. Rico learned this on SmackDown in 2004. The two had wrestled each other before, but after Rico became the eccentric Adrian Street character, Holly was apprehensive about working with him.
Holly has no sense of humor. Well, no, it's no secret that Holly's a little homophobic.
Hardcore actually flat out refused at one point because he didn't understand the gimmick. Rico and his former tag partner Charlie Haas revealed this on Rene Dupree's Cafe de Rene podcast.
That you were trying to convince people, listen, work with Rico, because they didn't want to work with me. Yeah. He goes, you take no bumps. It's all facials. You save your body. It's acting.
It's like Bob Holly refused to work with you. I fucking I'm like, dude, Bob. But Billy, Billy Gunn was like, dude, it's the easiest fucking match you have to do. The easiest match.
During Rico and Charlie's feud with Bob and Billy Gunn, a stiff chop exchange led to Holly coming around to Rico. Rico shared his memories wrestling Bob on the Wrestling Then and Now YouTube channel.
And we had about a 45-second chop fest. And he kept getting harder, and I kept getting harder. And he shot me off, but as he leaned in to shoot me off, he goes, no, that's what I wanted to see. And he shot me off. And ever since then, I gained his respect.
Bubba Ray Dudley was another who wasn't interested in doing anything with Rico. At No Mercy 2004, they squared off in a 6-person tag. Prior to the bout, Bubba made it clear he didn't want to do any spots with Rico.
But when we were going over the match, Bubba was giving us shit. I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that.
Longtime booker Pat Patterson then stepped in, which led to Bubba changing his tune.
You know, Bubba stormed off, Pat went to the green room, talked to Vince, and then we all came back. And for somebody who didn't want to do anything with me, Bubba Ray Dudley came up with a spot where I kissed him on the mouth.
A few months prior, Rico blew up at Bubba backstage before a house show. Rico asked his opponent what he wanted to do for their match. Bubba responded with anger, saying that since Rico and Haas were the tag champs, they should plan things out.
And he goes, I'm tired of this BS, but he says the word. He goes, you guys are the champs. You think of the match. Charlie and I always gave Devon and Bubba the first chance to say something out of respect. They were in the business a lot longer, than we were. So we were doing it out of respect, and he took it like we didn't know anything. I said, you want the titles? Here. And I threw the title at him, and I said, I'm not going out. Dean Malenko came and found me. You got to go out. I said, no, I'm tired of this childness. This guy's a big baby.
This argument resulted in Rico refusing to wrestle Dudley. Bubba was then forced to apologize by road agent Dean Malenko, so the match went ahead, although Rico and Bubba continue to be at odds to this very day.
I said, what the hell? Like we really win these titles? What's up with you? They give them to us. You want to win a title, go win Gladiators, you fat pig. About 25, 30 minutes later, Dean came up with that fat little spoiled brat. He apologized, went out and had the match.
Let's look at another talent from SmackDown in the Ruthless Aggression era, that being Torrie Wilson. Torrie has made it no secret how uncomfortable she was, taking part in raunchy and risque segments. Perhaps Wilson's most anxious WWE moment took place in her hometown of Boise, Idaho, on the November 27, 2003 SmackDown. Torrie had almost everything asked of her by WWE, but dancing was the one thing she never wanted to do. This was something Wilson previously told the higher-ups, including Vince, who agreed not to put her in any dancing skits. Chris Kanyon tells the story in his book that he saw Torrie crying backstage before the show because McMahon was making her dance with Ernest Miller. Wilson's family were going to be in the crowd, which made her even more scared and nervous since she hated dancing so much. Kanyon advised Torrie on the best way to get through it. He believed Vince was testing Wilson, so Chris told her not to let the chairman win.
Come on, Torrie! Oh, yeah!
Despite the nerves, Torrie did great. The hometown crowd went nuts for her. Meanwhile, McMahon got his kicks from the whole ordeal and was grinning ear to ear, watching on from the back.
I don't care if she's dancing. Oh, look! Oh, yeah! I love the show Torrie had to do it.
KANYON had made up his mind that he didn't want to work for someone like Vince again, especially after what McMahon made Chris do on the February 13th 03 SmackDown. This was KANYON's return to television after a lengthy injury layoff. However, it turned out to be the most infamous moment in wrestling. Head writer Paul Heyman told Chris he was going to come out of a box dressed as Boy George and instructed KANYON to sing a certain way.
They told me before I went out there as Boy George, they said, sing like a
At this point in his career, Chris hadn't yet revealed he was gay publicly, though many in the industry suspected it. So imagine his reaction after hearing that he was going to come out of a structure similar to a closet while dressed as a gay musician, topped off by the specific singing instructions given by Heyman.
To me, the Boy George thing and the coming out of the closet on national TV, that was a message, I thought. That was like, if you come out of the closet, we're going to beat the shit out of you.
The storyline in question centered around Paul and Big Show trying to get under Undertaker's skin, but yet this was how he was being reintroduced to TV. Believing they would fire him if he said no, KANYON agreed to do it. Chris also feared that a refusal would make others think he was really gay, something he didn't want his peers to know. KANYON continued in his book saying he'd never felt so small in all his life, and that McMahon was laughing at the top of his lungs during rehearsal.
I mean, come on. Somebody found something out or heard something or said, let's put this guy to task. And it's a bullying WWE trick. Why else would you do that? I think that really did hurt him. The
segment ended with Undertaker delivering a brutal, unprotected chair shot to KANYON.
I've been accused of smashing KANYON with a chair because he was gay. I didn't even know he was gay. Yeah, I didn't even know until like years later.
And did you care when you did find out?
No, I could care less. Yeah, I mean, but there's people out there that have created that rumor. Well, Undertaker smashed him. Undertaker swung a chair the way Undertaker swung a chair.
KANYON was already in a bad state of mind due to his previous injury and the difficulties in his personal life, so this angle only made things worse.
So you took over 50 sleeping pills because you couldn't live with being a closet homosexual. I mean, was it
that was part of it. I mean, I'm bipolar.
Chris thanked the McMahons after being fired the next year. KANYON had been released by the time WrestleMania 20 came around, but he was still allowed to come to the event. After the show, Chris ran down to the ring and posed on the turnbuckles. This, along with the various interviews he did bashing the company following his departure, meant there was no chance of him returning.
I do appreciate that I got that opportunity. Doesn't mean he's not a douchebag. Doesn't mean he's not a scumbag and two-faced and evil. I mean, I do believe he, in many ways, an evil guy. But he did do something nice for me, and I don't feel two-faced for thanking him for giving me the opportunity.
We spoke about Torrie Wilson earlier, and she wasn't the only one that had an issue doing revealing skits. Francine had been originally told that she'd be a manager on the revised version of ECW in 2006. This didn't come to fruition though. The Queen of Extreme was instead put in bikini contests, which she absolutely hated. Francine spoke about her miserable WWE experience in interviews with Husey Entertainment and Hannibal TV.
They tell me, always have bikinis with you because this is what you're going to do. Now, if Tommy pitched that to me over the phone, I would have never signed that contract, money or no money, because that was bullshit. Uncomfortable, didn't like doing it.
And I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm doing bikini contests against Barbie Blank, who is a doll, don't get me wrong, but she's 19. I'm 34 years old. I came here to work. I didn't come here to wear a bikini. Like, I want to work. You told me I was going to work.
Francine quickly asked for her release but was told no. A higher up then suggested she establish a rapport with Vince to ensure her fortunes changed in the company.
But I had someone higher up tell me, what you need to do is you need to wear a low-cut top so your breasts are out, and you need to put oil on your chest. You need to knock on his door and lean over his desk and say, Vince, what can I do for you? And I said, I don't do that. Never had to sleep with anyone for a spot. I'm not doing that. He goes, well, the other girls do it. I said, then let the other girls do it because I'm not doing it. That's not how I roll. That's not my thing. I'd rather be sent home.
McMahon later told Francine that he hadn't watched the original ECW, so he wasn't familiar with her work. This meant that instead of taking bumps and getting physical, he wanted to indoctrinate her into the Divas style. Francine wanted nothing to do with this, and only lasted less than 6 months before getting cut. Luna Vachon also despised taking part in bikini contests, because it made no sense given her crazy character. She was made to appear in the Miss Rumble swimsuit contest at the Royal Rumble 2000, but true to her persona, Luna didn't show off her outfit. Deep down though, she was even more furious than her character let on. Luna even had an altercation with Vince before she went out. Her husband at the time, Gangrel, believes this ultimately cost Luna her job.
They wanted Luna to take her top off, and she said, you spent all these years making me ugly and be ugly, and now you're asking me to... And she stood up to Vince in front of everybody. If you're asking my opinion, I don't know. They didn't fire her out and out for refusing to take that off and standing up to him. I think it waited like a week or two, and then they used that as the excuse to fire her.
Luna's downside guarantee was only $500 a week during a time where WWF were making money hand over fist. This likely contributed to her being unhappy with McMahon and the company as a whole. After she was fired, Luna went on a bender in which she expressed her anger at Vince.
So cocaine, she had written out, you Vince. I'm like, oh, and then it was just downhill after that.
In a similar vein to Luna, the Godfather was far from pleased with his creative in the year 2000. But unlike Luna, Godfather was one of McMahon's favorites. Though due to pressure from sponsors and the television council, Vince had to tone down the character significantly. It was a complete 180 when the Godfather became the Good Father as part of the Right to Censor faction. The man behind the gimmick, Charles Wright, discussed the change while speaking to Title Match Wrestling.
Me, I couldn't be on during the week. I couldn't be on Saturday mornings. I couldn't be on Sunday mornings. I had to be on after 9 o'clock at night. I couldn't say pimp. I couldn't say roller fatty. I couldn't say hoe train. I couldn't. If you do, and it just, he's like, Charles, I'm fighting for you. And he did. If it was up to Vince, I always told Vince, you're the biggest pimp I know.
Wright hated the change and was miserable for the Right to Censor's entire run. He'd initially refused and then threatened to quit, but each time McMahon reined him back in. The chairman even made the Good Father one half of the tag champions to ensure he stuck around longer.
But I was ready to quit. The day that they put me in the RTC, I was like, I'm out of here, Vince. And like I said, they dropped the straps on us. And then we had the straps. I wasn't going to walk out on them. So as soon as they took the straps off of us, I'm like, I'm out of here, Vince.
This wasn't about money. It was simply a case of wrestling not being fun anymore in Wright's eyes. The Right to Censor had tons of heat, but for Charles, it was a far cry from being the weed-smoking, positive pimp. He reflected on this in a conversation with Chris Van Vliet.
My answer to all these questions is I hated it. And it was nobody's fault. Vince, it was just hard. I know it's a work, but it was so hard all those years being yourself, not a character. You're going out at TV and just being yourself, and they're having fun, and you're making money, and then all of a sudden they take it away from you. And I remember being in the office with Vince, and he goes, no more hoes. And I'm like, so, really, no more hoes? I said it like 4 times. He goes, no more hoes. I'm like, I'm not a pimp? He goes, no, you're not. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do this no more then, you know?
The narrative for Miro and Malakai Black's time in AEW denotes each wrestler's failure to lose matches, or even show up to work in Miro's case. They had been victims of Vince McMahon's bad creative in WWE, so when Triple H took over in 2022, it opened the door for both men to eventually return, especially given their subpar runs in All Elite Wrestling. To set the scene, both men joined AEW during a period where the promotion was keen to sign wrestlers from WWE, particularly those who'd gotten a raw deal creatively. There's plenty of times this formula worked well for All Elite, but Miro and Black are definitely exceptions to that rule. In fact, their alleged behavior has likely been a catalyst for AEW changing their approach when it comes to signing talent directly from the Federation. A knee injury and marital issues explain some of Miro's absence. He was essentially off TV for 2 out of the 4.5 years he spent with the company. The general consensus is that the Bulgarian had been turning down creative pitches, including feuds that would have seen him on the losing end.
What happened with Miro? He and I just had, at times, different visions of things. We just kind of drifted into some different ideas of what we thought we should be doing. I wish him the best, and that's what he's doing now, but that must make sense for him, and that must be why he wanted to do it.
Apparently, he didn't really want to do any jobs. And when a guy's not going to do any jobs, it's just like, well, I got nothing for you then. Those were the creative differences, I believe.
Miro responded to these claims in an interview with Shaq Wrestling, where he addressed losing just 2 out of his 27 singles matches in AEW.
But the problem is those rumors are spread by one person, by these dirt sheets, so-called dirt sheets. And they have no evidence, no proof, right? They just can go out there, run a story, and they can nothing can be traced back to them. Oh, I heard, I saw, So it's just, clearly, if you judge this by this run, obviously it doesn't make any sense. Clearly, when I lost to Sammy Guevara the title, that didn't make any sense. When I lost to Daniel Bryan right after that didn't make any sense. When I lost to whoever, so let the people go back and review whatever I've done, and we talk about that.
Unlike Miro, Black maintained an on-screen presence for most of his 3-year stint with the organization. He worked 15 singles matches in that time and lost 2. Yes, he was in a faction for the majority of his run, but the lack of one-on-one matches was quite noticeable. Not only that, but Black almost never took the pin in multi-man bouts. His final record in AEW saw him pinned 3 times out of 71 matches, with a further loss coming by submission.
It becomes this thing where people want to desperately, there being a narrative. Like one of the things they're like, oh, he never wanted to be in AEW. That's completely false. That's absolutely not true. I had a great time in AEW. I had a lot of fun. Did I do everything that I wanted to do? No, but that's okay. Because at the end of the day, it's not my company. I don't have any say. And it's the same way for, although he didn't want to lay down for people, right? Like if you really think that I have so much pull in the company that I can say who I'm not or I'm going to up against or like lay down against. You think I'm going to not like vouch for myself and put myself in like the main events and stuff like that? You think I'm going to politic for, oh, I'm not going to lay down for this person?
The smoking gun to all the rumors that Black and Miro refused to do business came from Darby Allin on the Ariel Helwani show. Darby doesn't give names, but reading between the lines, we can figure out who he's referring to.
The cancer got cut out.
Which is what?
Just egotistical wrestlers that don't want to lose.
When you talk about the cancer, can I ask specifically who you're talking about?
No, like who literally has the egos? Who doesn't want to do what's best for this company? It's about doing what's best for this company. It's pretty obvious.
Well, I mean, the name that comes to mind is Punk.
The whole Punk thing was just his own thing. It wasn't about wanting to win or lose.
Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our similar video on 10 WWE wrestlers who flat out refuse to do business. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.